you who are participating this afternoon, and thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Briefly, I am a retired educator after 38 exciting years as a French and English teacher, an assistant principal, a principal in both elementary, middle, and high school, as well as a university adjunct professor. My heart event career was just as exciting and started 8 days after my 2008 retirement. So the motto is great to be alive and to help others is my daily meditation. Our visiting program, the mission is to inspire hope in heart disease patients and their families. We often call this the attitude of gratitude, the power of giving back. When we visit, we give back. And I want you to think of Men and Hearts chapter members as a resource. We want to increase and maintain the success of our visiting programs by doing 3 things: recruiting new accredited members from chapter members, retaining your accredited visitors in the program, and recognizing accredited visitors. This afternoon, we will cover these areas, the key aspects of a successful Men and Hearts visiting program. We will identify some techniques to recruit Men and Hearts members as accredited visitors, identify best practices for retaining members and accredited visitors, and share some tips to recognize members and accredited visitors. And hopefully at the end of this, it will enhance our understanding of best practices in our visiting program management. Last I saw, there are about 50 of you online today, so think of yourself and just think, where do you rate? I'm not sure we have anyone who is actually new to Men and Hearts visiting, but there are probably several of you who have some experience as an accredited visitor. There are probably a lot of you who are experienced in accredited visiting, and I'm sure there are some chapter visiting chairs on the webinar with us this afternoon. And a question I always ask people is, why do people choose to be a Men and Hearts visitor? Well, I want you to think about the best visit you ever had. Now, what made it a great one? And then on the flip side of that, I want you to think about the worst visit you ever had and what made it the worst visit. And in what we call an elevator statement, which is really a 15-second soundbite that introduces your opportunity to spotlight the Men and Hearts visiting program, that good experience you had and that bad experience you had often will help you in making that 15-second soundbite, because the soundbite is your opportunity to introduce and spotlight the Men and Hearts program. So if someone asks you about your visiting role or your visiting program, what would you say in about 15 seconds to convince someone about Men and Hearts? And these are some areas you might think of to put together in a 15-second soundbite. What is your role as an accredited visitor? What are the benefits of an accredited visitor? What are the expectations of an accredited visitor? How much time does one need to commit? And can you answer any questions very quickly about your role, your benefits, the expectations, or the time involved? Because so often we're asked by either hospital people or the media, what is an accredited visitor? What does it mean, and what do you expect to get from being a visitor? The key aspects of a successful, and that's what we want to focus on, a successful visiting program. And there are 4 parts that I think are very, very important. The first one is the organizational structure of the actual visiting program. And those 5 parts will include, first of all, the National Visiting Chair, which I'm very proud to be serving in that role, the RD or the Regional Director in your region, the Assistant Regional Director, the Chapter Visiting Chair, and of course you, the visitor. So that would be the 5-part organizational structure. And in order to have a successful program, all 5 parts must be involved at some level. Now those 5 parts, once that structure is in place, these are things that occur at that level. You recruit, select, train, accredit, monitor, and annually reaccredit your visitors. And this is what we're doing this afternoon. This is an annual reaccreditation process for our visitors. And the third one is a uniform record-keeping and reporting system. Very important, because at the end of the day, at the end of the reporting period, it's what we have called an annual report, and that can only be accumulated if you have some type of uniform record-keeping. And the last one, adherence by all chapter visitors to the policies set forth by HIPAA and the local hospitals. Those two go hand in hand. All hospitals have policies, and the policies may differ from hospital to hospital, but you are adhering to the guidelines by your particular visiting hospital. The cooperation for the program, in order for that to be successful for the men and heart patient and the family, there has to be a continuing cooperation of individuals and groups outside of men and heart. And those consist of our medical professionals. And so you might ask, why medical professionals? Well, they are encouraged to join local chapters. They should be encouraged to present programs to chapters. They should be a part of your team. The second one would be your hospital administrators. That may be your marketing department. It may be the head of the marketing division. It could be any number of people who fit in that category of hospital administrators. Other agencies and support groups, it may be your volunteer services. You have the support of other areas, because in a lot of hospitals you have what's called Department of Volunteer Services, and that particular person can be very helpful in helping you achieve and retain visitors for your programs. We have a big challenge. And so what's our number one challenge? We're like the very people we serve. We're heart patients. We're family members. And we share our experiences as we offer hope. So we serve heart patients by being there to listen, to share their experiences, and offer encouragement. So we do 3 things. We listen, we share, and offer encouragement. But the challenge is the success of that visiting program depends upon the strength of the individual chapter. So we always say we have a need for volunteers, because recruiting new chapter members is necessary to ensure the future of your visiting program. You don't have members, you won't have a very strong program. And so the question might be, whose responsibility is it to recruit accredited visitors? Well, this says the visiting chair, because the world's best recruiters are certified volunteers. But the bottom line is all of us are involved in recruiting visitors. The visiting chair needs our assistance as we try to grow our programs. So, how do you find people who want to be accredited visitors? One way might be by word of mouth. People volunteer because they were visited. You may recruit face-to-face, or you may appeal to the general chapter membership. You see, recruiting visitors is an ongoing process. Some people continue to be angry or frustrated or in denial long after their heart event. And so a person who still dwells on his or her own procedure is not yet ready to listen to the needs of a hospital patient. After my surgery, I would not have been a very good accredited visitor, because I was still hung up on what had happened to me. I had just retired. I had all these plans, and then 10 days after I retired, I was in open heart surgery. And so for 2 years, I had to deal with my own personal down spiral about heart disease. But cardiac places are great places to visit and recruit members, because in a cardiac rehab facility, those members or those patients have already taken charge of their recovery, and they're learning how to maintain a healthy lifestyle. So if you're not taking advantage of the cardiac rehab facilities, this is an excellent place for visitors. And the last one, use testimonials or positive messages. If a patient indicates a desire to become a visitor, invite that person to a meeting to see what it's all about. And once you do that, make a concerted effort to communicate with them. Don't just leave them out there. Once they come, continue to communicate with them. I actually see recruitment in a 3-component phase: promotion, persuasion, participation. Now, recruitment to me is asking someone to be a part of and participate in a program. They've seen what you've done as a visitor. So now you want to see if they want to be a part of the program. And so we have to promote Men at Hearts and promote Men at Hearts accredited visitors. Get the information out there. Let people know that your program exists and that you're interested in using volunteers. The second part of recruitment is persuasion. You have to convince the right target audience. So why is your volunteer, why are you asking someone to be a Men at Hearts visitor? Why is this position so important? And what can they do in this particular area that they couldn't do someplace else? Why should they donate their time and energy? So you have to be prepared to answer this "what's in it for me" question. And the last part is the participation. You're promoting the visiting, you're persuading someone to become a visitor, and participation. Participation means that you physically have to get the person into the program. You may have had occasions like I have where people go through the training, they may visit on the floor with you one time, and then there's a reluctancy. But until they've actually gone through the final phase of accreditation, walked onto the hospital floor, gone into a room, talked with the family, they really haven't fulfilled all the components of recruitment. It's kind of like the guy in the chair here at the airport. He's bought a ticket, he has his luggage, they're calling for his flight, and he's asleep. He really has not begun to participate in traveling. So we want to be sure that when we promote, we persuade, that they actually get involved in participation. Volunteer recruitment would be much easier if everybody in our community already knew what we did. The second challenge is, are we actively recruiting new members and accredited visitors? What skills and characteristics that you feel are needed to make a successful visitor? We talk about time commitment and a willingness to learn, but there are some other characteristics and skills that we think are necessary. So when you're looking to tackle this challenge, I want to encourage you to keep in mind the qualities that you feel are needed to make this move. Yes, time, commitment, communication, those are all very important. And again, it's really easy to recruit and retain visitors if everybody knew what we're doing, and that's our challenge. So how effective, once we actively recruit new members and visitors, how effective are we at managing our accredited visitors? Do we have enough to get the job done? Will they return next year? Those are all questions that are part of this challenge and recruiting new visitors. Accredited visitors need to know up front some basic requirements. And the first one is that they must be a member of Men at Hearts. The second one, that they must have experienced a heart event. Now, a heart event can be a procedure or a treatment. It can be medication. It can be monitoring a stent, arrhythmia, a congenital heart defect, or some other asymptomatic condition. I think I'm a poster child for heart events. I've got a rap sheet that has 24 different events, everything from sudden cardiac arrest to AFib. So I've experienced a heart event. But there are also people who have congenital heart defects who would also qualify as visitors. And then the caregiver of a heart patient. So those are the qualifications for being a Minute Heart visitor. First of all, you need to be a member, must have experienced a heart event, and a caregiver. Very important. All accredited visitors should be encouraged to attend chapter meetings and participate in other chapter activities. And this is a question that we get asked, I think, most often. Do accredited visitors need to come to chapter meetings? And my answer is yes, because it's like at my home. If I invite you to come to my home, I want to be there when you arrive. If you're going to visit a patient in the hospital and you invite the family to come to a meeting, it's very, very important that you're there when they come so they at least see one face with whom they are familiar. So all accredited visitors should be encouraged to attend chapter meetings and participate in chapter activities. This quote is credited with no one in particular, but it's very, very important. It says there's only one thing worse than training your visitors and having them leave, and that's not training them and having them stay. So you want to make your training exciting, you want to make it fun, you want to make it appealing, and you want to make it something that they are going to enjoy doing, because that means that they'll leave that thinking this is really going to be a very wonderful experience for me as I visit heart patients. So what do we need to do for training and orientation? Well, first of all, the big question is, the visitor needs a clear description of what they will be doing before they start their visit. So what do they need to know to feel comfortable and competent in visiting heart patients and their families? Well, up front, you want them to know an estimate of how much time is required per week, per month, however time you're going to visit. They also need to know what skills are needed to be successful, and there should be an opportunity to discuss questions and concerns. Another important aspect is they need to know who to call or who to speak to at any point during the entire experience. When I look at the skills and characteristics that you're looking for in a visitor, I also think of the skills and characteristics that a visitor might be looking to himself or herself, see if they really have these things. Now, understanding all the different types of heart diseases is not a requirement. You don't need to understand all types of heart disease to be a good visitor. Your experience and your information on basic good heart health is enough, because the person being visited often wants to know how they will get through the experience and what life will be after surgery or procedure, just as much as the medical information they will get from their doctors. So to me, the communication skill is at the top. Good communication skills. Now, this isn't the most important thing, but you do need communication skills because you're communicating with the heart patient and the family, and you are communicating with the hospital and other professionals about Minute Heart. Number two, to me, is extremely important, listening skills. Knowing when to speak and when to listen is critical for accredited visitors. Because when you visit, it's mostly about being able to listen to someone else so that you can determine what their emotional support needs to be, or what their needs are. Yes, speaking skills are necessary to be able to tell your story, but it's more important that you learn to listen to the patient. Organizational skills are very important because you have educational materials you want to keep up with that you're giving patients. You need to organize who to visit and when. You want to keep orderly any information from the patient that you have been given access to or permission to keep, and all that information you keep for further use. The fourth one is time management skills. You need to manage your time when you visit, and you want to try to make sure you visit everybody who needs to visit in the time allocation that you have. Most importantly, if you are committed to a date and time for visiting, please be sure to honor that and be there unless you have an emergency, because the medical professionals in the hospitals depend on you to be there. Mondays and Fridays are very busy days for us here in Huntsville, at Huntsville Hospital. And so our critical days are have people on the floor are on Mondays and Fridays, particularly on Fridays. The fifth one is confidentiality. As an accredited visitor, you fully understand that you may not share patient family information with anyone except for the purpose of recording the visit or informing another visitor about a situation. And the last one is intuition. And you might ask, why is intuition important? Is it a skill? Is it a characteristic? Well, it's important because I call it my need to know. It can send me a signal that things aren't right. I've stayed too long. The family is not in the mood for talking. It's kind of like the intuition, or it's your second sense that something needs to be changed. And so with intuition, you can be respectful of other people's privacy. Just because a patient isn't talking often doesn't mean that the patient isn't interested. It could be there's so many other things going on, and this really is not a very good time to visit. So intuition is a skill that's very, very important. My dad always said, I'm the oldest of 5, and he always would say to us, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. And so I use that for everything that I do, whether you're having a first Minute Hearts patient and family visit, whether it's a first chapter meeting, whether it's the first orientation session. I use this marker because it's my first time meeting someone, and I may never get that second chance. And so I encourage you to kind of keep this in the back of your mind, that you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. So think about when you walk on the floor during the first 5 minutes when you get to the hospital, you set the tone when you walk on that floor. So you want to be positive, you want to have great eye contact, and you want to have an uplifting tone of voice. If you're not having a good day on the day you're supposed to visit, I recommend that you find somebody to go to your place so that you can go another time. And remember, in Minute Hearts, we have the keyword support. The steps for visiting, we call that support. You sign in, use discretion, ask permission, be positive and encouraging, open a conversation, respond to questions, thank the patient or the caregiver and the parent, and sign out. Pretty simple. Just keep those things in mind when you visit, the steps for visiting. The Minute Hearts visiting protocol. We've already said that all visitors must be fully trained and accredited unless the visitor is in training and accompanied by a fully qualified visitor. Visiting permission must be obtained from the hospital administration, and they must wear their Minute Hearts accredited visitor badge. And we've been asked this question before, does it have to be a Minute Hearts badge? All hospitals, I would say most hospitals, because of identification purposes, will provide all volunteers, and we are a volunteer, a hospital badge, because those are usually used for clocking in and clocking out. But it's wise if your chapter provided some type of identification to you so that when you're on the floor, not only are you wearing your visitor's vest or whatever your chapter chooses, but you also have a badge that has your name on it. The last part of that is accredited visitors must distribute only approved Minute Hearts information to heart patients, and all of us are aware of our heart packet. The only information that you're taking away from the hospital would be the patient's name, the address, the phone number, and those are the basic things that you want because you want to communicate with the patient after he or she leaves the hospital or communicate with the family after the patient leaves the hospital. And the other one is the visiting record, however your chapter chooses to use a visiting record or a patient record. Visitors may not solicit membership while you're there at the hospital. You simply tell the family members and the patient about your support group meetings and invite them to attend. Let them know that you don't have to be a member of Mended Hearts to attend support group meetings. And it's also helpful if you would suggest or just give an idea of what the support meetings are like. You may have some speakers for the next few meetings you may want to talk about. I'm going to pause right here to see if you have any questions. Marcia can see, I can't see who has a question or if you've had a question. Marcia?
Sure. We have two opportunities for you to ask a question. You can type a question into the field box titled chat or titled question. And if you raise your hand, I will unmute you. And we had one question earlier that I responded to, and I'm just going to bring it up for everyone. This question related to caregivers as trained visitors and visiting patients. And so, Fredonia, if you'd like to address our recommendations there for caregivers involved with visiting.
Yes. Our recommendation is that the caregiver is accompanied by an accredited visitor who is a heart patient. And we get asked this, I guess, every time we do a workshop, why can't a caregiver go alone? Well, there is the integrity of the Mended Hearts program. There's some standards that we have to comply with. And so at this point, we're still asking you to maybe look for a buddy, find a partner for that caregiver so that he or she can continue to visit. I understand what you're saying. They've gone enough times. They know what they're doing. But we have to keep in mind that the visiting program has some standards it must adhere to. And when we're working with pharmaceutical companies or companies for grants, we often say that the integrity of our program is that it's a peer-to-peer patient visiting program.
Okay, thank you. We have Angela asked a question, and Angela, I guess I answered it. It was dealing about the same criteria for Mended Little Hearts apply, and I indicated yes as a trained visitor and a parent of a CHD child or member for a trained visitor. Any other questions? If you want to note the little glove, I can unmute you and you can ask a question. If there's any others that have come to mind thus far, we'll have another opportunity toward the end, and we'll be finished in about 30 minutes. So I don't see any other questions at the moment, so we can go ahead.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We know that visitors are crucial to the program, and to retain them, we have to understand what their needs are. And so that's a relationship kind of thing. But it's even more important to keep them involved so we're pleased with what they're doing. And so we've just done the recruiting part, and so now I want to look at the retention part, or retaining, and that's maintaining relationships. It is most critical that we keep in mind that volunteers are crucial to the program's existence. And to retain volunteers, we have to understand what they need and how to meet those needs. And keeping them involved and keeping them pleased with their participation is essential. I don't know if anyone has a problem having too many volunteers, that you can't get them all on the floor. That would be a great problem to have. If you have that many, please keep them involved, because if they're not involved, they will quickly find something else to do. So as a visiting chair or another fellow accredited visitor, you want to know the signs of burnout with your visitors. And this can happen. It may be a change in personality. It may be a lack of enthusiasm. It may be any number of things. But it's okay if a person is burned out and then you make sure that person backs off and gets some time to get himself or herself back into position. Because remember, I said earlier, the first 5 minutes on that floor is the most important part of that visit. So know the signs of burnout. How much time is this involved? How motivated is the visitor? How dependent are your visitors? Is there a lack of full commitment? And then the last thing we don't like to do is, we have to keep in mind to retain them, is canceling the visiting privileges, and we'll talk about that before we finish. So behavior of the accredited visitors is extremely important, and your role as you work with them is important. So when you have to deal with the situation, please be discreet, be tactful in dealing with them. because the behavior of the volunteer determines how the program is viewed by the hospital. And remember, we're in the hospitals with the blessing of the hospital administrators. And we certainly don't want any kind of behavior that's going to cause a problem with that. Negative incidents can bring down a visiting program quickly. Keep in mind that we exist to help others, but we also exist to help each other. And so if we're doing things that we have problems that cause a negative behavior, it is going to affect others, and it's also going to affect each other. And so you have this issue on there of canceling visiting privileges. And most time that occurs when there's a conflict. Now, conflict resolution is very, very important. Because a visitor differs in opinion does not mean that a visitor is not a part of a team. But those conflicts should be aired, and they should be resolved, not ignored. And you want to have a system in place for dispute resolution. Personal contact is best when you're dealing with conflict and you're looking at the possibility of canceling a visiting privilege. Use mail for very serious problems. Remain neutral and present the basic information for dealing with the problem. And always try to help solve it, and always involve the chapter president. And when you're in doubt, you want to go back to that 5-step organizational structure. You want to contact your regional director or the ARD, the chapter visiting chair, and so forth. Because time lost only produces greater problems and misunderstandings. So here's what you want to do when you have to look at canceling privileges for visiting. Number one, check to see if the problem is with the Men and Heart standards or with the hospital policy. We've had instances within the last 3 or 4 months where there's a difference in the hospital policy and the Heart's policy. Keep in mind that we're in the hospital based on their policy. And so you want to follow whatever the hospital procedure is. And I don't know of an instance in which it would conflict with Men and Hearts, but if it does, then you want to follow that 5-step procedure. Notify the visitor that a problem exists. Always try to solve it. And then if all else fails, you can't solve it, the bottom line is we have to cancel the visiting privileges because of the integrity of our organization. Best practices in accredited visitor management. Number one and foremost, keep them happy. They've got to be happy about being a part of this program. Be sincere. Create a cordial atmosphere by always being courteous, understanding, and cooperative. And I think the last 2 bullets on this list are probably the most important ones. Ensure that the program is accountable and make sure the standards are maintained. And this goes back to the visiting caregiver being able to go or wanting to go alone. We have to make sure that our standards and the program is accountable. And so until that decision is changed, we still abide by that. Does it take time to manage a program? Indeed, it does. In order to maintain the national organization's program integrity, and because Men and Heart is its flagship program, 3 things we have to do. Initial training. That's foremost. The final phase of training is when you are actually on the floor with your trainees. And the number of days that you think a visitor needs to be on the floor with a trainee really will depend on the chapter and the visitor and the new trainee and the accredited visitor. Some people may not be comfortable after 3 visits, but that's okay. You can go a 4th time with them. But you want to make sure that they feel comfortable, they're at ease doing what they need to do. And then the final phase of the program's integrity is reaccreditation, and that's what we're doing this afternoon. So you want to make sure that the program is accountable. You want to make sure the standards are met, and you want to keep a very strong group of volunteers. So now we have recruited them, and we want to retain them. So again, provide the training and exercise. We've done that. And very soon we will be doing an additional method of training. It's an online training. It follows the same process as the traditional, or the old way of training with the DVD and the visitor's handbook. This is going to be another way that we can train our visitors. And the new process is going online pretty soon, and it will have one new segment. It will have the a diversity section or assessment with it. But the bottom line is it's the same training that we've done before. We're trying to increase our visibility and get more visitors involved. And so we're looking forward and we're really excited about this online visiting training. And I think at the end, Marsha may make some comments about how that's going to work. Makes expectations clear from the beginning. What do they have to do? Pass on positive feedback from patients about visitor contact. This is really, really very important. I was on the floor several weeks ago and I met a family with a red pillow, and I introduced myself, and I noticed the red pillow, and she said, I want you to tell the gentleman who talked to my husband and me this morning that he really put my husband at ease about his bypass surgery tomorrow. And I want to thank you for what you do. And so I checked the chart to see who was on call that day or who was visiting. Sent a very quick email that said, saw one of your patients today, saw the red pillow, they're very complimentary of you. Everybody likes those positive, those good warm fuzzies. So pass the feedback along to the patient, to the visitor. And have the support system in place with the buddy system. I referred to this when we talked about caregivers. This might be a good place for you to have a buddy for a caregiver. It also is a good place for your visitors if you think they want to swap out a week, for example. If I can't go on Tuesday, I know that the next Tuesday is my partner, and we just simply swap Tuesdays. Get feedback from your visitors, and the last part of this, retaining them, is recognition. People want to be recognized. You know, we don't pay them. We pay them in 6 figures, we say. So with recognition, what do they need? Well, the first one is they need to be respected. Capable, they've gone through this 4-hour training, they've been on the floor with you for 3 visits. They want to feel like they're capable of doing this. They want to feel needed, to be appreciated, and to know how they're doing. I love the Snoopy Have You Hugged a Million Hearts today. You note the whiteboard at the top. Usually we ask people to make various suggestions about how they recognize their visitors, and we're not going to do that this afternoon. This is just a list. I'm sure in your own chapter you have a number of ways that you recognize your visitors. A simple thank you goes a long way. Bottom line is, whatever you're doing in your own chapters, please recognize those visitors. You can do this by spotlighting a visitor every week, every month in your newsletter, on the website, any number of things, certificates of appreciation, nominating them for chapter or national awards. And I love the quote at the end, volunteers are paid in 6 figures, S-M-I-L-E-S, smiles. Back to the top, a simple thank you goes a long way. We have been talking about on the national level how to recognize volunteers, because we fully understand that recognition shows that the visiting program values volunteer support. So recognition, both formal and informal, creates a motivation for continuing commitment. And so we're asking your input. How do you think that national could recognize Million Hearts visitors? How will they be recognized and appreciated? What's the time frame? And who is responsible? So if we're looking at a national recognition, not just a member of the year, but something on the chapter level, I think in a lot of your hospitals, after 100 hours or X number of hours, they get a pin to add to their bar. We really are looking at what we can do on a chapter and a local level wherein we can recognize visitors. So those 2 questions are for you, and we seek your input in how will they be recognized and appreciated, what's the time frame, and who is responsible. This is our second opportunity for questions. If you've been able to type them in, I can't see who has questions. I see the little bar blinking. I know that means that Somebody's asking Marcia something.
Yes, I will.
Questions?
Yes, I will address a couple of them that I've responded to, but we thought for the good of the whole group. We had a question, since we have 50 chapters right now doing educational programs and distributing the AFib and stroke information. The question was, are we now visiting stroke patients? And I responded, primarily we're visiting heart patients, but if you have enough volunteers and there's some adequate training that they could visit stroke patients. You know, we were looking at stroke as a increased risk from a AFib condition. So, Fredonia, would you like to respond further to that comment about visiting stroke patients?
I think that you've answered that adequately. Because AFib and stroke are so closely related, when we visit the heart patient and an AFib patient, we just remind them to that is one of the, I guess, side effects of AFib is a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
But we actually don't visit the stroke patient just as a stroke patient, because for one thing, they're in our hospital, they're on the neurological floor, not on the heart floor, and we don't have enough visitors to cover the additional areas.
Okay. Thank you. Bob Reed has a question. Bob, you have your hand up. I'm going to unmute you so you can ask a question. Bob, you're live now. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, my main concern is we've been asked by several doctors about visiting people with just implants and different other parts, but we told them that we're supposed to be just with the heart patients. But I do go when they ask me to go and to visit them. So is this all right?
You said with an implant?
Yeah, implants, you know, just stents and so on and so forth. I've had doctors ask me, and I've gone ahead and visited, but we've been told that we're supposed to be just with heart patients.
I think, so Fredonia, you can talk about all the variety of heart patients, and we do want to reach all of those. So
that's what I was going to say. I have an ICD, and I haven't had a stent, but I've had an ICD, and that was a hospital stay. It is a heart event. It's not like the traditional. I've also had bypass surgery, but I would welcome a visit because I could also ask questions about how does one go about taking care of himself or herself, with an ICD. Now, in our area, we have an ICD support group. They meet with us occasionally, and we meet with them. But we're all heart patients because the ICD was because of some heart event. You may not be able to answer any specific questions about what happens when it fires or those kinds of things, but you could certainly talk about a heart event.
And more procedures are being done now in the cath lab, whether it's a interventional procedure like a stent, or whether it's an electrophysiologist performing an ICD or a pacemaker. So all of those patients that they're not really going through open heart surgery, but they are being hospitalized for another type of procedure. So we want to branch out and look at all types of heart patients in all types of conditions. And so expanding our visiting program to the cath lab, to the waiting areas of the cath lab, it would be most beneficial to the families as well.
Okay, that kind of takes care of what I was wanting to know. I will pass the word on to all my staff to take it into consideration of what a doctor requests and just go ahead and do it.
Exactly. I think having the doctor recommendation is fabulous. Keep up the good work, Bob.
Yeah, we're trying.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
All right. Any other questions? Let's see. Steve has a question. Let's see what that one is here. Okay, Steve asks, please tell us about the new packet of Mended Hearts information that I've heard will be coming to chapters. Okay, so Steve's referring, I think, to the reformatted next reiteration of the visiting pack. So currently we have the heart pack, the Hope heart pack in the turquoise envelope. And our next reiteration of this is looking at first a name change, heart guide, and it's going to be a little more of a permanent type of piece, a spiral bound 48-page booklet, 8.5 by 11, with a pockets, front pocket, back pocket, so that chapter information can be inserted into it, as well as hospital discharge information that the patient would receive, so that it becomes kind of the permanent item that they take home. And the content included will be everything that's in the current heart pack, but we're also going to expand some of that to have more tips for caregivers. There'll be a section on medications. We're looking at putting the depression information back into it. We've had expanded educational information on heart failure and cholesterol and other conditions. So it will be a well-rounded pack in a spiral-bound notebook. And that will not be available till 2015. So we're still working with the heart packs right now. So Steve, I'm going to unmute you and see if that answers your question. You're unmuted now, Steve. Did that address what you had to? Oh, thanks. Okay, he typed it in. Thank you.
Okay.
He also asked, shall we be visiting peripheral artery disease patients too? Fredonia, would you like to address that one? Kind of that goes along with the broadened.
It goes along with with the broad definition of heart event. You know, as new processes come in place, we'll find that we're adding more terms to it. So I would think yes. One thing I want to say is, remember I said earlier we don't have to have all the answers and know all the things about heart disease, you know, to visit a patient. Sometimes they just want to talk, and so if you have enough visitors and you have the time, you could talk about good heart health to families and patients. And I found that to be true yesterday. I was talking to a family, and we were talking about heart health and getting the patient back up, and she said, you know, I need this myself. I'm diabetic. And we're just talking about basic nutrition and exercise and stress and those kinds of things. And so I think a lot of times that families want to talk. If we just talk about good heart health, I think we can pretty much cover all those areas. And if it's a particular medical situation, that's when I always advise them to talk with their doctors about that.
Okay, we have another question from Glenwood Shearer. He asked about whether this webinar will be available online and so that others can view it. And I wanted to just let everyone know that the webinar is being recorded and it will go live, or actually be posted as an archived item, so that future members that were not able to make either yesterday or today's webinar, they could view today's webinar. So it will be posted in the member and officer portals, so it could be viewed there on the website probably after next week. It'll take us a little time to get it there, so next week. And Fredonia's PowerPoint, as well as a standalone, will also be posted there. So thank you for that question, Glenwood. And Bill Voister asked, and I thought I might as well share with everyone, when will the new Gift of Hope member brochure be available? And they're being printed right now. We've redesigned it. It will be available mid-November, and we'll be sharing that with all chapters. And there's no charge for that. And the one difference in that it will not include member information, dues information. It's really more of who we are, who is Mended Hearts, what do we do. And so it's something that you certainly can use in promoting your chapter, and you can put your own additional information as a chapter member, local contact, maybe an adhesive label on the back side. It's still the same size. It's a little member trifold, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, folded 3 times. So thank you, Bill, for that question, and I think that was a good one for everyone. Let's see. Mary asks, what about transplant patients? We do visit transplant patients in various chapters where there's hospitals performing that procedure. Fredonia, I don't know if you had anything to add about transplant patients.
No, other than we do visit. We just don't have them in our area, but we do visit. And we have them come to our meetings also. We have several here in the area.
Okay. The PowerPoint presentation will be available on the website, so any member, it'll be on the officer portal, and we'll also put it on the member portal since not all visitors are officers. So it will be available in both places. So you'll have the hard copy PowerPoint that Fredonia is using today available, as well as the recording. And we're not making a hard copy of this. Everything will be digitally available to everyone from the website. Let's see, I'm looking at other questions here. They're coming in fast and furious. John notes that we take care of all heart patients from stents to transplants, including heart failure on meds, and I'm a heart transplant patient. Thank you, John. Bob Burns, will this training replace the accredited visitors training on a local basis? No. I know there you all have face-to-face reaccreditation sessions, and this is just an alternative. Why don't I go ahead and talk about the online training that we're developing right now. This is also an alternate method for new visitors to be trained in we've taken our current visitor training program, the handbook, and the videos that we have available now on the DVD, and we've moved that to online, or we are in the process of moving it to online videos and an interactive online course, so that if a new visitor joins your chapter and wants to give back and visit patients immediately, and maybe you don't have a visitor training session planned at the moment, they could actually go online. They're verified as a member through our website in the member database, and then they're redirected to the online training, which will be hosted by a vendor. Then upon completion of the online course, there'll be an affidavit of completion that they can print out, and then they'll be instructed to take that to their visiting chair at the chapter or the president, and then it's time to be observed, in whatever formats that you have set up, so that they're supervised and monitored with the chapter. And when a person does go through this new online visitor training, the notification goes back to the chapters. So the person goes back to your supervising and your monitoring and become familiar with the local processes of monitoring, tracking visitors, etc. Okay, let's see, any other questions? Okay, Dolores asks, will the new heart pack include the heart pump or LVAD and the various valve repairs or replacements? Dolores, we haven't gotten into the details of the content, but I think we do want to put some of the latest information out there. So we will include as much as possible on new techniques. Obviously, we cannot include everything, but the website can include more than maybe printed copies, so we can always expand upon content that way. And Marilyn Huffman asks, will there be a standardized reaccreditation course available for our visitors? We don't have a standardized reaccreditation course currently. I think with this webinar today, we're attempting to kind of go through some of the major aspects in our visiting programs, but we don't have a standardized course yet. And Fredonia, I don't know what your thoughts are about that. If you have anything to add.
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Let's see, what other questions? And again, if anyone wants to be muted and make a verbal comment like Bob did, please post your little glove there. Okay, we have a couple more typed in questions. Bill Voister notes that when they're comfortable and willing, heart transplant patients make great support meeting speakers. Good point, Bill.
That's
Thank you.
true. Yeah, very good point.
Dominic, how are you? His question is, when in 2015 will the new patient handout be available? The new patient, the heart guide that I was referring to for the visiting, will be available in January. That's our target. So we plan to continue to use the inventory of our heart packs right now in English and in Spanish, and the heart guide itself in 2015. So we're looking at the new fiscal year, which starts in January, for those new things to be available. We're just starting our process of developing those with our vendor now. There's another question. Once an application for a new member is sent in, how long does it take for them to get their member card and PIN? Not really related to visiting, but we were a few months behind before, but we are now within the month. We're catching up as we're still manually putting everything in to the member database. So it's about a month. And I would encourage all members to join or even renew online. It's a much faster process as we go forward. Thank you, Richard. Okay, here's another comment from Diane. What other means besides the visitor team program do other chapters take to increase Mended Heart's awareness at their hospitals? So I guess we could throw that out to raising awareness of Mended Heart's visiting in the hospitals. And I know that some chapters distribute the member brochure with some local information in waiting areas and the cardiologist areas about the visiting program and the support meetings that are going on. That's one avenue. And Fredonia, do you have any others, or if anyone else has a comment?
Yes.
Go ahead.
If you're in a hospital already and you have an office or a closet where you keep your materials, your pillows or whatever you use, if you can just put a sign on the door. We have a sign that says, I think it's the one that we use, we can make a difference, we'll make a difference in what Mended Hearts is all about. You'd be surprised when the family members are standing around in the hall. Ours is close to the ICU unit, and you'd be surprised when family members are standing there in the hall talking and they see that sign. They will call the number and say, I'm on the 6th floor, and can you tell me about Mended Hearts? Interesting tale. This morning I got a call from a wife who said, my husband received a pillow. He had surgery, I guess it was Monday, and she said, the pillow has come apart. And I saw your name and number on the door about Mended Hearts. Can you tell me how I can get another pillow? Mm-hmm. So the very fact that we have the information posted there in the hospital on the surgery floor. So if your hospital allows that kind of thing, it's a good place to place any kind of information, any kind of contact information. Also, if the doctors who do most of the cardiothoracic surgeries, they're on board with you, they always like having your newsletters or a flyer or something in their office so they can share that with their patients. So whatever your hospital allows you to do to advertise or to promote Mended Heart, I suggest that you would try that.
And Bill points out, in addition, he says we have a little Ask Me About Mended Hearts button, red and white, and you could wear that to help promote yourselves. Thank you, Bill. And Mario has a hand up, and I want to make sure if he has a oh, it's Maria. Let me see, Maria, if you have a question. I'm going to unmute you now. Do you have go ahead.
I wasn't connected when I guess there was introduction.
Okay, you're good now then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I've been through more, I would say 90% of it.
You're fine, no problem. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Let's see. Another question that's been typed in is, if someone is interested in additional information from visitors, how long do chapters generally keep in touch with interested people that never attend a meeting? Fredonia, would you like to address that one?
Actually, it depends on the chapter. We keep in touch with ours for several months. In fact, we have someone we still contact over a year. The database is still there with our treasurer, and occasionally we'll go back to that database. I know we have a lot of people who come into our area for surgeries who are from another area. And so when we think we've seen a lot of people from a particular city who are coming to Huntsville, we just pull that database to see how many people are coming from Albertville for surgery and try to see if we can start a satellite chapter. So it really depends on the person who's keeping your data. We don't keep anything except mailing addresses for those people, for those patients and their families.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question. Is it permissible to give a patient your private cell number if they need to talk to someone? Certainly, if you're okay providing it for them, then that's certainly okay with Mended Hearts.
It's okay with Mended Hearts, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And on the back of our pillow, we add our phone number. So the visitor adds his or her phone number.
Okay. Someone's asking, how do we get the Ask Me About Mended Hearts button? And we have those in our inventory. If you go on to the marketplace and merchandise ordering area, you can order those. They come in a little bag full of, I don't know how many's in a bag, 25, but I think, and there's a slight fee to it, but you can order those online and in our marketplace area. Thank you, Richard. And Bill Boyster points out that emails are free to continue to promote to those folks, and snail mail takes sometimes 3 months. So they send their newsletter by email to all the patients that have given permission, yes. Okay, how to get a visitor button or pin. One of the comments that came up on yesterday's webinar was that we could provide, while we don't have a nameplate purchasing across national, but we do have a template that we could provide and put it online so that if folks want to develop their own name badge for accredited visitor with just your name and Mended Hearts logo and accredited visitor, we'll provide that as a template, and then you can take it to a local printer to have those customized for you in your area, in your chapter. Diane asks, how often would you recommend visiting the cardiac rehab classes for recruiting purposes? Usually there's a new class at least every 6 weeks, and say if you were there, I think cardiac rehab is the opportunity where patients are already in a positive outset to improve their life, and I think that's a great location to actually visit patients and ask them to join as members too. Fredonia, any comments about cardiac rehab for recruiting?
And usually there's an orientation. I would check with the cardiac rehab manager to see how often they're doing orientation, because although you're there for 6 weeks, you could miss some people if you wait to go, once every 3 or 4 weeks, because they're going through orientation. I know in our area twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 o'clock. So you might want to ask the cardiac rehab nurse what's the best time to come talk to patients.
Mm-hmm. I know we have some members that are in cardiac rehab classes every week and visiting. Sometimes it's discharge classes too, but also
yes.
Cardiac rehab classes are, I think, a great opportunity. Let's see. And Frank notes that they have their visitors wear their name badge and their Mended Hearts polo shirts and their red vests. And so all kinds of people approach them and say, who are you guys? Yeah. Thank you, Frank. Okay. John says they visit 4 cardiac rehab centers and visit according to visit all the new patients. So he visits cardiac rehab, or their visitors visit every 2 to 3 weeks to every month, he says. All right, let's see. Any more hands up? Raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question verbally. Just click on the little glove there, raised hand button, and I'll unmute you. Steve has another question. Let's see. He says a weak part of their visiting program in his chapter is getting volunteers to regularly participate in the reaccreditation sessions. But we're reluctant to drop them as visitors. So we will look forward to a standardized reaccreditation program that we could tailor. So that might be something, Steve, that we
might want to look at.
We can develop that and put out, you know, the kind of an outline of an agenda and things that really should be covered in reaccreditation sessions. Since those are experienced visitors, often it's good to talk about challenging situations and maybe do some role playing. You know, talk about some of those tough questions that you might get or something like that from a patient and family. But we can look at coming up with a reaccreditation agenda. So thank you for that suggestion. Be sure to provide the, Bill points out that when you're giving out the membership brochure, make sure you put a local contact phone number and email, especially when you're sending things out to the cardiac rehab centers. So make sure when you get this new member brochure, include, like, you might want to do a set of labels, which we have a template on our online, and there's a template online also for business cards that you can print with the new logo, so you can print those. And I would say they're made so that you can run them off on adhesive labels from Avery Labels. So try those for promotional purposes and customizing your member brochures. Diane has a question, Fredonia, that says, do any Mended Hearts visitors attend hospital cardiac staff meetings? I would say,
no.
Go ahead.
Not with us, but okay. If you have a rapport with the cardiac nurse, when we started the AFib and stroke initiative last 2 months ago, I was asked to meet with the cardiac nurse, the charge nurse. So I guess it depends on your hospital. If they ask you to attend, to share something, you certainly that's an advantage you have that other hospitals probably don't allow their visitors to do. Some hospitals have Mended Hearts people come in when they do their discharge talks with patients. So if they ask, the answer is yes, by all means, if you're comfortable doing that.
Definitely. I know in the Dallas chapter that the cardiologists were doing rounds and having meetings at 7 in the morning, and our Mended Hearts president and visiting chair made an appointment to come into that staff meeting by the cardiologist and just briefly say who we are, introduce himself, and this is what we do for your patients. And that was very well received. It built that relationship with Mended Hearts visitor and the cardiologist team. And so it was just quickly a brief, but 5-10 minutes to build that relationship. So I think it is beneficial when it can happen. Here's a question. How do you recommend we respond to patients' request to prayer? Fredonia, would you like to address that one?
That comes up, I guess, you know, we're in the Bible Belt. So when they ask to pray, our response is, you know, we'll keep you in our thoughts, but we just don't typically pray with the patient. Now, if the patient initiates the prayer and you're standing there, I see nothing wrong with that, because otherwise you've got to back out of the room, you know. But if they ask you to pray for them in the room, I always say no. And if there's a question about that, I just usually would say to the patient, we have 6 hospital chaplains. I'll be glad to stop by the desk and ask someone to come and talk with you. Okay,
thank you. Diane has noted that for customization, they created a chapter stamp with a local contact name and phone number, and they stamp that information on the back of the information packet. So thank you, Diane, for that idea. I passed it along here.
It's easier than doing labels.
True. All right. Bob Reed has another question. Bob, I'm going to unmute you now. Go ahead.
Yes, it's just to kind of go along where the person was asking about the pillows. First of all, we do wear a vest, and we have the badges identifying ourselves. But we do give the pillows out, and when we do, we inform the person that please keep our calling card, because on the back is our personal phone numbers, cell phone and house phone, and email addresses. And if you have a problem with the pillow, just turn the card over and call one of us, and we will see that you either get a new one or we'll get it taken care of.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
want to pass that on.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks for that comment.
All right. I don't have any more questions, and there are no more hands raised. We've gone a little bit over our hour, so I guess I'd like to wrap up and thank you all for participating. And I thank Dr. Fredonia Williams for her presentation today. And any closing comments, Fredonia?
Well, thank you, first of all, Marcia, for facilitating and taking care of the questions. I couldn't see the questions, so I'm glad you repeated them for me to hear them. But to all of you this afternoon, I thank you so very much for becoming a visitor, and thank you for what you're doing for families and heart patients and for giving hope to others. It really is a rewarding experience. And again, we pay you in six-figure smiles, and thank you again.
All right. Several members are typing in to thank Freddie for her presentation. So thank you very much. And here's her contact information if you have any follow-up phone calls or emails for Fredonia. So this webinar has been recorded, and we will conclude it now. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact Fredonia or me. My email, Marcia, marcia.baker@mendedhearts.org. And you can always reach me via the toll-free number, 888-HEART-99. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate your support and all your visiting.
Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.